Hello everybody, welcome to Mantel Farm here on YouTube with myself Josh, and Roger will be along soon, experienced beekeeper. Not sure how much we're going to be able to do with our bees today, but there are a few things that I want to recap from last week's video. Now, temperatures today at the farm here are pretty chilly. Got a top on because sitting out here in our training area it's pretty cool at the moment. Now, Roger a couple of weeks ago mentioned 56 days and possibly having drones being laid up in February to get swarms in April, mid-April. And in actual fact, I think he got a little bit confused with that one. It's around about the 36 day mark. It's about 10 days after they've emerged from the cells. And so given a couple of days of good flying, reasonable weather, then they're usually ready to go and mate with virgin queens. So the other thing we saw last week, talking of laying and eggs and queens, we were privileged to see the queen of our Cedar National hive laying not once but twice in front of us as we pulled the frame out. It was very exciting. Roger and I were quite over the moon seeing that. It was really quite nice to see. We also observed in our WBC a lot of pollen on the frames, and the bees with the pollen doing the waggle dance, or a version of thereof. We also saw a young bee stumbling around, one of the young baby bees, all fluffy, still wet and a bit clumsy, falling around on the frame, and then popped its head down into one of the cells to get on with its first job of its life, which is to clean out the cells, which is again a lovely little thing to see. And it is really nice, and I'm sure you all do it at home and when you're doing your beekeeping, but pull out a frame, have a look, and see what the bees are up to on the frame. It's actually quite an amazing thing to watch them doing their own thing. It really is more than just pulling a frame out, having a quick look to check whether or not you're happy with the state of play. Have a look at them, see what they're doing. Are they running around? Are they doing the waggle dance? Is there pollen? Are they depositing pollen? Is the queen laying? If it's warm enough and you've got the time, spend a bit of time just having a look through your frames. It's a really nice thing to do. It's a real pleasure. If your bees are nice and the weather's nice, it's a real pleasure. And they still had the feed on.
They still have fondant on, didn't they? Oh,
yeah.
Right.
Oh, they finished it.
They finished it.
Oh, look at that. Look what they're doing.
Hmm.
So they built comb under there.
Yeah.
And then they built comb there. Is that worker?
That's drone.
It's drone, isn't it? Yeah. So what does this tell us, Roger? This building of comb on the top of the frames, is that just simply because there was space there that they could build into?
Yeah.
You think?
I mean, that's basically because this is our last year's queen. They will be looking to swarm in the future sometime, and they won't swarm until they got drones. So all the frames that are in there have got either worker brood or worker foundation in it, and so this is a convenient place to build a bit of drone comb, which is what they've done. So I'm going to turn the board over so we've now got the correct bee space over the top of the frames, more or less, I hope.
That should pretty much, that prevents them from doing that again, doesn't it?
Yeah, they probably won't be doing that again much. But, I mean, they are quite busy in spite of the weather, so you know it's not too cold for them, and it's only whatever it was, about 13 degrees, wasn't it?
Yeah. 27.2 where our probe is, and that's on the outside of it is on the fringe of the brood, isn't it? That's still going up. What do you reckon it might get to?
Well, it might get up to 30. I don't really. I have no real way of knowing. Actually, I've never done it before. And we've got a bee there with some sort of orangey brown pollen. That's possibly from like there's plums or cherries or blackthorn. They're all the same family, so they're all plum. And thinking about the pollen again, that poplar tree is producing catkins,
Yeah.
which, if I remember rightly from having seen them on the ground, have sort of orangey brown pollen.
What's it got up to?
31.8 at the
Holding at
moment.
31.8. That's not bad, is it? With the upcoming cooler, crappy weather coming up, should they be worried about feeding the hives or anything?
I don't know.
That's a real question. That's a big question, isn't it?
That is a huge question. I mean, I looked in my hives last week, took all the frames out and checked them properly, as it were, rather than just having a quick look like we are today. And they were bringing in quite a lot of fresh nectar and a lot of fresh pollen, and putting it into cells. But
Yeah.
if you're not in that situation, if you looked last week and all your frames were more or less empty, then you're going to have to be very careful about making sure they do actually have something to eat.
And what sort of syrup? 1-to-1?
Yeah, thin syrup,
Yeah.
1-to-1. If you use thick syrup, then they're going to tend to thicken it even more and store it in the corners, and then in 2 weeks' time, when the weather does warm up, they're going to take it out of those and put it up into supers, and if they're on by then, which they probably will want to be, because another couple of weeks we'll have a lot more brood, hopefully, even if the weather does continue like this, because the fact is that because it's cold outside, it's still warm in the box, and they're going to, if they've got any food to use, they will expand the brood nest. It's that time of year. So, although you're not actually looking in there, there might be possibly 2, 3, 4 more frames of brood in a week and a half's time. It's always tricky because putting a super on is kind of giving them a big volume to keep warm if you're expecting them to, and particularly if you're expecting them to draw comb, because you put foundation in. So basically, if you've got it, put drawn combs in your foundation, in your supers.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
It's trying to avoid congestion, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the thing. If you can't get in for a couple of weeks because of the weather, as you say, it's still warm in the hive. What is it there? 32.5?
Yeah. Every spring, a lot of beekeepers are caught out because they keep thinking, the weather's not good enough to look, so they don't look.
Yeah.
But the weather's, you've still got the bees in there, and they will find things to do. And if they can't go out and forage, then they'll produce queen cells.
Yeah.
Because it's what they do.
Yeah.
So, you can't, just because you don't think it's warm enough, doesn't mean that they don't think it's warm enough to do things that you would rather they didn't.
So for those watching, what's in that? That's a mix of
thymol, icing sugar, and a bit of soya flour. So you're giving them carbohydrate with the icing sugar, you're giving them protein and stuff with the soya flour.
Yeah.
Because it's about 18% protein.
Sounds about right.
The soya flour that I get. I used to be able to get GM free soya flour, but they don't do that anymore. Presumably because you can no longer buy GM free soya beans to plant. I don't know. That little bit in that tub that I was just squirting on there, that will do at least 4 hives like this, with a dusting like that. It might be slightly less if we were taking the frames out and dusting them individually, which is the way I prefer to do it, but you can't do that in this weather. It's just not warm enough. Right, so I'm going to try and make a hole in that without killing anybody. So I open that up so they can get to it, and they'll chew that hole bigger. Now that it's there, they'll chew around the edges and get grip on it and make it bigger, so that'll give them access.
They're straight away on that, aren't they?
But, it's interesting. That one just landed, and it's got the dust all over it except its eyes, and it's cleaned its legs off of it, and it's had enough of it, but its thorax and the sort of ocelli part of its head are still covered in dust.
What's it now, 12.7?
Well, that's the outside, so
yeah.
it's,
So it has cooled down a bit, hasn't it?
yeah. I mean, that's through a probe, but it's actually down there in the shade, so it's actually colder than.
It's probably about right then, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we've had a look at our hives, and all is looking pretty well. We didn't take any frames out because it is cold. I think when we were doing the inspection it was about 13 degrees. It's raining now, and it's probably only about 8 or 9 degrees, and we are expecting cooler weather to come. So all being well, we'll have some warmer weather either next week or the week after, and we can have once again a proper look at our hives, and probably be considering popping some supers on at that point as well. So from me and our silky hen here, they've just arrived. I'll pop her back with her friends. We shall see you in our next video here on YouTube. All the best. Take care.